Welcome.
Welcome to the Stream of Truth. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I'm Sean Kelly.
And today we have a really interesting topic exploring the divine masculine lesson plan. And just a heads up, on Friday, we will be exploring the divine feminine lesson plan. And before we get into that, we just wanted to mention that we have a really exciting free gathering 2 weeks from tomorrow. It's Thursday, March 10th at 8 o'clock Eastern. And the free gathering is about twin flames.
Yeah.
There's just such a amazing topic, amazing journey. So anyone who's interested in twin flames, anyone who is on a twin flame journey, we'd love to come together and just share our experiences and hopefully learn from each other. And so there's a link to register for this twin flame gathering in the description below this, in the episode description.
Yeah.
So we hope to see you, hope to meet you. We'll be on Zoom. It'll be really fun.
Yeah, I think we got sort of inspired by all the twos, the messages of the twos. And so that's part of what makes this stream, I think, interesting as well. Divine masculine, divine feminine stuff. And then the metaphysical monthly gathering that we're doing as well. We
should put a link for that too, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we could do that. But that'll also be about twin flames. Also, in addition, talking about sort of highly sensitive persons or empaths, try to help people that are struggling with some of that sensitivity, because it doesn't have to be a problem. It doesn't have to be a challenge the way that a lot of people experience it.
Yeah, so you're mentioning that tomorrow night we have a metaphysical monthly meeting, and we've been inviting people in. It's through our Patreon community, but we've been inviting some people in for free to check it out. So we could put a link for that too.
Sure. Yeah, we could do that.
Okay. Alrighty. So getting into today's topic, this was the longest episode description I think we've ever had.
Yeah, it's kind of a longer one.
A lot here. You were really pumped up about this. Me too.
Yeah, I guess I was. I think it's really interesting. Like,
yeah. What do you find most interesting about it?
I just like to talk about myself. No, I think that we are creatures of curiosity. Primarily, like we are pretty curious minds a lot of the time. And I think that we also have a lot of sort of understanding, innate understanding. I think that other people see things differently than we do. At first, I don't think that's clear to us, right? But later on, we realize, oh, people see things differently. They have their own like experience of this. They like stuff that I don't like, and and why, right? And that type of thing. So then also so when we're talking about sort of divine feminine, divine masculine sort of lesson plans and how their orientations are in different ways, I think that's just really interesting for anyone who is trying to consider their own plan. But a lot of us too, we want to kind of understand a little bit about what our partner is experiencing also. And so I think that's why it's most interesting. But before we get into it, I also wanted to just say, when we're talking about divine masculine, we're not talking about men, or divine feminine. We're not talking about women. What we're talking about is, the roles that's being played in the moment varies back and forth. So you can notice in yourself, sometimes you're more feminine, and other times you're more masculine. Other times you're a bit of a mix, or a balanced mix. Ideally, you're a balanced mix in the moments, but you kind of embody both to varying degrees in varying ways, and you are both. And it's actually through the divine masculine sort of learning, which is usually about tapering some of the shadow aspects of the divine masculine and embracing the positive aspects of the divine feminine, right? So it's about sort of shedding some of the stuff we don't need in the divine masculine energies, and then bringing in like an acceptance of the divine feminine energies within us as well. So and both sides do that. So whether you're a male or a female, or male male relationship, or female female relationship, whatever, or if you don't even identify with gender, these energies are still there regardless. So there's it's important to realize, like, I may misspeak and say men, and also a lot of this is about what society has sort of conditioned us,
Programmed.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
around primarily men, but not just men. You can think of men as being sort of the physical embodiment of the masculine energies, right? They're a bit bigger, usually a bit stronger physically, naturally. Not that women can't be strong and stuff, but there's, and then women tend to be a little bit more stronger and like feeling pain. They have a much higher pain threshold than men, from the studies I've seen. And then also they have much more emotional pain generally, right? Or more emotional sort of instability that comes from their lots of emotional sort of impressions that the way that their lens tends to see the world. But it's not always that case. And when I say instability, it's not meant to like suggest that a lot of emotion's bad. It's when the emotion is discerned as bad, right? Like a high emotion is just lots of love, really. And when I say it's unstable or something, or something like that, what I'm talking about is the state of hysteria that not just women, men do this too. Whenever anyone gets really emotional, kind of freaks out, it's hysteria, right? And that's sort of like
Yeah, I might use the word range. The divine feminine may have naturally a pretty large range of emotional expression or feeling, perhaps in contrast to the divine masculine.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, take it all with a grain of salt. And if it sounds like I'm being sexist or something, I promise I'm really not thinking about it like that.
So we're looking at this as each being has a divine masculine lesson plan and a divine feminine lesson plan within them, each of us. And then of course, if we do identify gendered and we feel overall we're a divine feminine, we have sort of an overarching plan with that as well. So we're
Right.
balancing inside, and then we're also presenting as,
Right.
if we identify as one or the other.
Well, and that's the other thing, is that we're meant to eventually notice that identifying as one or the other is also limiting us. It's not observing our wholeness as both. So if we say that we're divine feminine, then we're gonna reject parts of our masculine principles.
I like this.
Yeah, so we're meant to notice that truly we're androgynous beings in spirit, right? We're androgynous,
right?
And we're not. There's no such thing as gender. We have both genders within us in full, but we've chosen to express as a particular one, right?
Yeah.
That's the best way to look at it. So a lot of these lessons will come back to realizing, oh, I have this other energy in me, and so part of why I said all of that was to help people realize that the divine masculine is an aspect of you, regardless of your gender, and vice versa. And it's really about letting go of the identification with that, with one of the or the other. Whenever we identify or label ourselves as this or that, we've limited. The only pure identification is the I am. So that's the that's the sort of goal for many. Not for all, like not all are going to go that far with it, right? It depends on sort of how much duality they want to step out of, how much egoic labeling they want to reduce. And if you can imagine, all suffering comes from this belief in limitation. So if you
And just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
so if you feel that you are a divine feminine, for example, and you'll end up rejecting aspects that you don't find in congruence with your definition of what a divine feminine should embody. And so if you either you already are going to have issues with the natural divine feminine shadow aspects that are going to come up, you're going to reject those because that's not how a pure divine feminine should act. But then also your masculine principles that are coming through are going to be distorted because you're going to see yourself as a divine feminine. So like, for example, a divine feminine may feel that they need to really be authoritative to try and assert their dominance in a relationship or in a business or in a something, because in the past they've had feelings of not being empowered due to patriarchy and various other things, and there's this overcorrection that's happening, and they think it's sort of like stepping into queendom, but it's not. It's confusion of sort of like, they had control, now it's our turn. These weird sort of conflict-based paradigms, and
Yes.
that is what the cause. That's what causes all suffering, is our identification with these concepts. So it's really, really important to realize we're totally both. And in any moment, we're actually embodying a little bit of both, but probably tipping more one way or the other.
Yes, so interesting. And then I'm just curious what you would say about our physicality, that we have quote unquote female physical characteristics or male anatomical physical characteristics.
So it's like why we show up with one or the other.
Well, this idea of in spirit we're androgynous, and then we're saying that part of the ascension process is fully embodying both our divine masculine and our divine feminine, and perhaps letting go, possibly, if it's resonant for you,
Yeah.
of labels, I guess, of even like I'm a woman or I'm a man. So I'm a being, I'm a divine being with both of these energies.
Yep.
But then at the same time, we do have some anatomical particularities, female or male. So I'm just curious how you see all that.
Okay.
The physical.
So there's the first thing of it is sort of the bias of experience for the lesson plan of that particular incarnative go around, right? So there are many places that there is no such thing as gender, and they they're all androgynous, and there is none of this gender conflict at all. It's not even a concept. So what's
You mean in other dimensions or
other logoses, not other dimensions, in this universe, but
yeah.
they're and they don't have any of that conflict. So basically at that level, first the logos has said, I'd like to explore this gender conflict a bit. We've explored it before in different places times ago. We'll explore it more, but the logos has sort of said, I think there's more we can learn if we pit these people against each other a little bit.
Can you remind me and maybe anyone else about what logos means?
Logos means love, or the word, the original word, or the original thought. I think it's Greek word, logos. In the beginning, I think there's in one of the older scriptures, I think they say something like, in the beginning there was the logos. And what they're talking about is like the original love of creation, like the original thought. So that's what the logos is. You just think of it as the guiding sort of architect principle that designs the creative design, what we would call the intelligent design of what we experience is sort of comes from the logos. It's hierarchical in that the sun is the logos for the earth, The earth is the logos for us, and then we're the logos for other beings that live within us, right? So within and on top of us, like we have spiders running all over our faces, for example, right? We are planets, more or less, roaming around with beings running on us, lots of beings, millions. So you can imagine that, and I've made jokes about to Tassel about how that's why I have a big beard, so I can like house more beings on me, right, and serve better, right? So that's my service. I don't have to do anything. I just have to be, right? But that's the point, is that the logos can't not serve. It is always serving because it's serving other entities, other consciousness densities will live upon it. And through the investment of the logos above, will invest itself lovingly into like plants, trees. They'll name a mountain, Machu Picchu, Everest, and love it, and go visit it and love it. Like these are conscious entities that become then egregoric and start to build bias, start to have some sort of weird kind of very low level sentience. But there's that intelligence in everything. So for that, the question that you asked is a really big one. So sorry I'm taking so long, but that's the first thing, is that the logos decided I'd like to have this man, woman, gender thing. And actually, there are other expressions of this too, like weird ones, really weird ones, like where everyone has like both organs, or they don't even procreate that way at all with like sexual relations. They might put their seeds into a sack, like give it to someone, like stuff like that. It's so random and weird.
Mm-hmm.
So but if they have the masculine and feminine, this is one of my theories around how we're looking to sort of perfect a third density being as the creative principle of the creator. Like I think that's one of the reasons that this place was so important, is the way we've decided to do it. So we had the matriarchy back in Atlantis and stuff like that, and that collapsed, and then we had patriarchy, and that's collapsing, or collapsed more or less. I mean, there's remnants of it, but it's gone. I mean, people don't generally. You're not going to see people going, "I love the patriarchy," like that. Even men aren't really into that, and there are certainly men that are like, "Oh, these women, what have they done to us?" Right? I'm sure there's people like that, but most, I would say, we're totally coming out of all that. And so that's meant to be that unification that I was talking about, and then because we're also transcending egoic identification of self with labeling, we're not going to see a woman. We're just going to see a divine being, right? That's all we'll see, and we'll just see love. There's nothing, so there's not going to be any like resentment or any challenge as we approach the enlightenment stages, as we raise our planetary frequency. But so, the reason that the reason that you're a woman is because your soul also, the logo said you can choose man or woman, or you can also choose to have like to be born with different effects on the body that maybe you don't have genitals properly at all, things like that, or hermaphrodites, things like that. So that soul chooses that for the lesson, and then there's experimentation that's been happening as well with souls that are sort of imbuing the mind body spirit complex sort of with a high feminine attributes, and then like giving them a male body. And this is meant to show that both energies are there. It's meant to exemplify it, right? While also allowing consciousness to explore what it's like to feel like a woman but be a man. And so, for example, I've always felt like a woman. I feel very pretty and nice and very I'm a pretty nice and loving thing. And then I look at myself, I'm like, whoa, what's that? That doesn't look right. I'm supposed to be pretty, right? And I think I was primarily women before. And so we build this bias to a particular gender as our incarnated experiences go further. And I think my bias, just through all my incarnations, has become a bias towards being a woman. And so this is my personal experience. And, if I were to have that experience and also become a little kind of really upset with what I'm in now, then that's when I might start thinking about changing gender or doing something like that. For me, I never got to that point. It wasn't so much of a thing that my generation did as much, and it wasn't. I wasn't attracted to men, so I didn't feel that I should do any of that. So I had that weird experience of feeling like a woman in a man's body. I understand that experience very well. But we're meant to exemplify some of these traits that we feel like you have a few quite masculine traits, right? But you're a very pretty woman, so it's meant to show us like that we have both the energies within us, and it's just sort of clear self, that it becomes evident just by observing people, right? That's part of the reason that we've progressed this way, and why the gender roles have become much more fluid over time, because it's meant to fluid and then realize, oh, it's all the same stuff. There is no real difference other than, of course, biologically. And then if you look at the body and the anatomical aspects of the body, you'll see lots of symbolism in things. Like, so the womb, represents creation, right? Like, there's lots of symbols too there that are meant for the person to consider exploring as well. So there's lots and lots of layers to that.
Interesting. So part of what I gather from what you've just described is that we come in usually, some people have both sex organs or not, but the majority of us have female anatomical characteristics or male. And we are somewhat socialized to just really identify with that. Like, oh, okay, I have a female body, I am a woman. You have a male body, you are a man. And what I hear you saying is almost like we start out in this duality of gender. And then as we ascend and awaken and ground in and tune into, oh, I have masculine energy within me. I have divine masculine energy. I have divine feminine energy in me. Almost like just transcending the human suit that we're born into. And as you said, and that's the term I like to use all the time, just that I and everyone else is a divine being.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting. We've talked about this just personally, what you just said, that you feel you have a lot of female energy.
I literally feel like I'm a queen walking around the world, honestly. And then I look at myself and I'm like, whoa, that's not a queen, right? That's literally, I think I spent a lot of time, not in as humans, but like in other dimensions or other frequencies of consciousness higher than this, like fourth and fifth density, where I was primarily acting as female and enjoyed that more. And my bias is to being a woman. I'm very envious of women for many reasons, and then I'm very I basically feel like a woman almost, but I know that I'm a man, right? So it's kind of it's a lesson in self-acceptance, really, because whatever body I'm in, I'm not this, right? So it doesn't truly matter that much, and that's part of what we're meant to learn, and why some of this stuff happens too, like why we bother to incarnate that way. And then there's also proximity effect of basically noise introduced to the auric fields from our really close populations, that causes distortion around like how women are supposed to be and how men are supposed to be. And if I feel more like a woman because I'd rather be more sort of loving and emotional, but I don't realize that, and then I don't like the negative side of the men, I've really just created a bit of a thing in myself, right, around what I should or shouldn't be based on what I'm observing other people dictate around our social agreements. And all of that is this sort of auric infringement that, like, people are just like confusing each other a little bit, because when we first created the the male female, this isn't to say that homosexual relationships are an issue at all. But when we first did it, that wasn't part of sort of the plan, so to speak. It was primarily the learning is more tends to be more harmonious when there's a male and a female. Not always, and it's they talk about this in the Law of One. It's not meant to say that there's anything wrong at all, but basically, as humans, we got really close together and really influential on each other, really tied up in stories and distortions with everyone, and then we sort of strayed away from nature and our natural sort of orientations. It's not, our natural sort of inclinations are to procreate, and obviously when two women are together, they can't necessarily do that. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it at all. There's nothing wrong with it at all. So, but the learning that happens typically was better. But now we're starting to. This is one of the reasons that the Logos experiments so much, is because they've seen that this happens, and then we're learning that, oh, this is really beautiful. Like, this is a really beautiful thing too. It wasn't quite how we planned it to go, right? There are still surprises, still sort of like, whoa, that's cool. Like, and that's sort of how it's seen, is like, we did not expect the men and men to get together, and men and women to get together. That we didn't really expect that, but it's awesome and beautiful, right? There's nothing wrong with it. So that's kind of how that's what I've seen about that anyway. I mean, and they talk about it in the Law of One a little bit as well, I think. But
I just want to go a little personal here, if it's okay.
Oh no, I don't like to talk about how I feel. I'm closed off. Walls are up.
So, and I know we have a lot to get to, but I just wanted to share that I have always been attracted. Well, I have had experiences with females when I was younger. I had like a girlfriend for a little while, not too long, in graduate school. And in college, right after college, I had some experiences with women. And I guess, that could be termed bisexual or something. I don't really like any of those terms per se. I just feel connection or attraction to different beings, whether they're
right.
Male or female. But in general, I have been attracted to males, but males who have, I would say, a lot of feminine aspects, like yourself. So, like, for instance, you have really cute underwear that has like unicorns on it, or
strawberries.
I
have sloths as well.
And you'll wear like crystal bracelets that are like really colorful. And I really like that. I'm very attracted to men who have like just a lot of, I guess, traditional feminine aspects. And you're very expressive and you have a very large emotional range. And all of that is what I am very attracted to. And then when I think about myself, I do think I've spent a lot of time in male bodies, vehicles in other lifetimes. That's sort of the intuition I have about that. And I do think I have a lot of masculine characteristics. Like I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So it's interesting that I think you and I fit. I am technically a woman. You are technically a man, but in some ways I might have possibly more masculine aspects to me.
In lots of ways. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just really, it's so fascinating.
I certainly have a lot of masculine aspects as well.
Yeah, you do. And I have feminine aspects.
Right. Yeah.
And so like this whole topic is kind of blowing my mind, because I guess I'm seeing gender in a way I haven't quite seen it totally before as we're talking about it. That just, if there weren't all these different stories from our society about how a woman is supposed to be or how a man is supposed to be, I just wonder how I would be. Maybe there's still more of me to come out.
you'd probably be much more at peace with just what you are, right? But there wouldn't be as much learning to be had because
Yeah.
it's kind of primarily through our internal disagreements with ourselves that we come to an agreement, or you know, um, it's kind of through fear or falsity that we realize that that falsity and fear isn't real, and come away from that, and so yeah, you can imagine like it's easy for us to be like, well, why wouldn't I wish I was just a woman then, like wouldn't that have been easier? And yeah, like it probably would have, if for me to just be a woman, but it wasn't, that wasn't the point to be easy, right? It's not meant to be hard either though. It's meant to be as it is, right? Like it's meant to be quite neutral, quite neutral, like neutral positive, like I talked about before. It's like a positive neutral. It's everything is sort of that positive. It's love, but it doesn't have the meaning unless we give it the meaning. Um, and yeah, so yeah, it could be so much easier for us. But yeah, we'll notice like, in some ways I'm like my, for example, in my kind of like assertiveness, or not my assertiveness, but I can be very stubborn, like and like just plant my feet and like immovable, and that's, I think, a sort of masculine kind of trait, right?
Yes.
Like I don't, if I discern something is the right way for me, I will not listen to anything. I won't listen to governments threatening my children. I won't listen to anyone about anything.
You are very, very sovereign, I would
Yeah,
say.
right. I'm that's,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. I'm very aware of my sovereignty, but it's the masculine principle which allows me to embody that, like in those moments.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so like we can have really, really strong masculine traits in certain areas, and then in other areas not have those, or and be
I just
more
want
the
to
other way.
say, as a compliment to you, and not that it's my place to compliment you at all, but
I like it. I appreciate it.
I think you have really, even especially as I've known you over the 2 years that we've known each other, I would say you have like a very balanced masculine and feminine within you
I feel quite
from
balanced
what I experience.
in that way. I
Um,
feel like that. Thank you for noticing.
yeah. Um, so should we get into the divine masculine lesson plan?
Yeah, we've talked for 30 minutes already, and we haven't even done the questions. Yeah, we should get into it. So again, just these questions, like we said, these are just sort of based on my experience primarily, but Tassel may have some commentary as well. And we just tried to come up with some questions that really probe at, like, they get under the surface a little bit around how divine masculine might feel about things that it may not be clear to the other or opposite embodiment, right? And that's the thing, is that each of us, this will resonate on some side of it for everyone, more or less. So that's why I can sort of just speak freely in a sort of universal way, because we'll be playing out the same lessons throughout the collective, more or less. If we take the specifics, circumstances out of it and just focus on what the core lesson is, like we're all kind of working on the same stuff in that way.
Okay, so the idea behind these questions is it's going to help illuminate sort of what the divine masculine energy is moving through
Yes.
in this
And
incarnation.
a lot of the stuff that I'll be bringing up is not my truth, not what I believe, not what is real. A lot of it is highlighting sort of what is false about
The
what programming and stuff we're meant to shed.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. So as you talk about it, maybe just mention that. Oh, this is my programming.
Yeah, I'll
know.
try to remember that this is programming. I don't want people to think I'm talking about an ideal or like a,
Yeah.
but a lot of it
Okay.
I'm talking about, like I'm tapping into my egoic sense of self that has these ideas still
The
there
male
that I
ego.
can. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to be
A little bit of both.
shining light on the male ego.
Yeah, a little bit, as
The
best I
human
can.
male.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have a bunch of questions here. Let's start with the first one. Mr. Sean Kelly, as representative of the divine masculine for the collective, what is challenging about the divine masculine energy?
I should have read the questions and prepared a bit better. No, I'm just kidding. The most challenging thing. So there's two things. There's I think challenge that comes from being it, right? And then there's also challenge that comes from experiencing it from others. So the challenge that comes from dealing with a divine masculine, like dealing with masculine energy as a masculine energy, is that it's naturally trying to do the same thing and is sort of in conflict with itself naturally, because if somebody's embodying primarily divine masculine traits and the other is also doing that, there's not as much divine feminine to lovingly receive and accept what's happening. So this is when you see men just go, I have a new car. Oh yeah, I have two new cars. Oh yeah, well I got a new job, and they just kind of keep one upping each other. It's a very kind way. They're doing it very kindly. It's not apparent to a lot of people that they're even in a conflict. But what they're doing is just being like, but look at me though. And then the other ones, but look at me though. And they're very they're doing that. So that's one of the challenging aspects of it. And because we tend to compare, like you could think of when we observe a successful man, and I'm a man, I immediately feel like I'm not enough of a man, right? Or I'm not enough of a masculine, or I'm not fulfilling the role that I should be fulfilling. We could look at, like, for example, your ex-husband. He's very successful financially, very put together, kind, great guy all around. And I'm like, he's a bit hard for me to look at him, more or less. So that's I think that's a challenge that exists on both sides. But for men, it can be hard because we feel that we are meant to show our value through our action, like, and not through love, or not through I'm not sure how to describe it, but not through loving,
Not through your consciousness in a
yeah,
way.
we're meant to like really just
Perform
and make sure to get the work done, like
provide.
no matter what. Like it's not acceptable generally for us to sort of stop and take, it's becoming much more acceptable, but stop and take sort of mental health time. And we don't, men don't talk to therapists as much as women do. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that there's more women that go to therapists. They're just more open about that stuff. We don't want to be perceived as weak. So that's the most challenging probably aspect of us, is not wanting to seem weak, not wanting to seem valueless, worthless, and weak. And if we are weak, we were worthless before. So the two go hand in hand, because if we were a weak man, like caveman or something, we couldn't protect our family as well as the strong man. Because things would happen and we're weak, right? And can't fight and stuff. And so we started to associate these characteristics of like physical strength or whatever with also emotional strength and stuff. And so we try to be like very stoic, very like unfazed, but it's all a lie. It's all a lie. And anyone who says that it's not a lie is just disconnected from their own feelings. So there's value in like the Stoic philosophy. And when I say Stoic, it's not a bad thing. Stoic philosophy is about being open-hearted and accepting feelings, not about repressing feelings, but it's about using reason and wisdom to adjust when our feelings don't align with what our reason and wisdom tells us is true. Then there's something that needs to be corrected in our perception. So I just wanted to say that Stoic is not bad. Stoicism is an amazing philosophy. It will certainly help raise consciousness. But that's probably the most challenging that I've noticed, is that weakness, the need to feel strong, the need to feel powerful, the need to feel in control of everything, the need to sort of take the reins of everything, and this sort of really strong, how some birds will dance to like get the get the other birds, the female birds, to come to them. Men, I feel, have to feel, they feel like they have to display why they're valuable in their power, and so they put on these shows of power, whether it's physical, like being bullying other men in front of women to be like, look how strong I am, ladies, I just beat the crap out of that guy for no reason, look at me. And they actually think that, so they'll go to a bar and like they'll get in a fight because they want to impress everyone around them. And the women they have probably have their eye on someone. They're like, if I beat this dude up, I bet she's gonna really like me. And they think in this skewed way, and it's real. Like they're obviously confused. It's not their fault either, but and that's why actually dealing with male relationships has actually been my probably my biggest challenge, is because I'm not so much inclined to follow those impulses, though they exist for me. I'm not so much inclined. So when they start to do that stuff and posture and stuff, I'm kind of weirded out. And so if a man is not super authentic and able to control some of his impulse to showboat, then I have trouble with that. But that's what I would probably say is the most challenging thing. So a lot of what we're learning in that is to realize our value without having to do anything. That realize we're valuable without doing anything at all, and we don't have to take from others who we perceive as weaker in order to attain our value or to show or demonstrate our value. We don't have to demonstrate anything. That's the I guess taking what that challenge is and turning that into the core lesson.
Ah, beautiful. Beautiful. This feels so healthy for men
Yeah,
to be able to
men
let
have trouble.
go.
I mean, both have their troubles, right?
Yeah.
For sure, for sure.
Okay, beautiful core lesson you just offered. Okay, next question, Mr. Sean Kelly. How does the divine masculine experience emotion?
Yeah, so I'll this one I'm not sure. I think this varies quite wildly because emotion and like the intuition and intuitive faculties, just depending on your sort of intelligence as well, like your sort of capacity for thought and intellect, also determines how you sort of experience the emotion and as your personality, and then all the distortions. So there's lots to this one. This one's very unique. So I'll just say that I thought emotions were like nonsense. Basically, I literally was, I just was being modeled to by all men that I really saw growing up, was that I'm not supposed to be emotional. That's silly. Like that's for babies. You know, a lot of boys when they're growing up, like, you know, if I was crying, or I'll never forget the first time that my friend, I think it was my friend, was crying, and his dad said to him, "Oh, you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about." And it was like, "You want to cry over nothing? I'll give you something to cry about." Like you're being a little baby, and he's like 8 or something, right?
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, "Oh, he's gonna like hit him. He's gonna hit him because he's crying, and then he'll be crying for real." So then it was really weird to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was actually going to hit him. What he was trying to do was use his power to say, "Look how powerful I am. Do what I want," which is shut up, right? That's all he was doing. He's not going to hit him, but the damage that does is immense, right? And so then that child, or me, and my dad didn't say that to me, but he would kind of make fun, and he did it as a joke. My dad's a very nice man, right? But as a joke, he would go, "It's whiner hour. Oh, it's whiner hour." At when me and because he'd come home from work, it'd be like 7 p.m. Me and my sisters we're fairly little, and we'd be whining. We'd be like tired and like how kids get, right? And he was playing. He wasn't trying to. But then I'm like, "Oh, I'm a whiner." Like it makes these effects. It causes effects about how we're perceiving ourselves in those moments, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of us have tons of these experiences, and that's the thing as well that's really important to remember, is like something like my dad doing that. He was just doing it as a joke. He was sort of laughing, and my mom's like, "Oh, stop it, right?" Like, and it's like a joke. It wasn't and it wasn't meant to be hurtful at all. And so, but we can see how like his intentions are just to try to dissuade, like he's trying to joke and be funny, but it just, it's sort of, his intentions are not hitting what he was trying to do. Instead, he's making all the other kids feel sort of shameful, by accident, right? And so it's funny now to think about it, but this happens a lot. And so, anyways, so the reason I say that is because emotion is is still very mysterious to me. I don't always know how I feel. It's usually it comes out in anger as well. That's the other thing, is if something's uncomfortable, anger comes up.
Ah,
Because we don't understand the feeling because we have cut ourselves off from a lot of our feelings, a
yeah,
lot of times. So instead of getting sad, which we're not supposed to get sad. Anger is like
yeah.
an energy of action, right?
It's manly.
It's manly, it's masculine, an
Mm-hmm.
energy of action,
Mm-hmm.
of like correction, of order, right? Like anger is some of the energy that we go, this is out of order, I will put it into order, and I'll anger like fuels that power to do that.
It's acceptable in our society for
And
a
it's
man to
yeah,
be
and it's
angry.
acceptable for men to throw like tantrums, more or less, a
Right,
little
but
bit.
not so much to be sad.
Right, but not really to be sad. And yeah, if a man
Yeah.
gets really, really mad and like breaks stuff, like people will make excuses for him, be like, "Yeah, he gets really mad," right, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Mhm.
But that's sort of what happens, is they're overflowing with emotion of varying kinds, and it all just sort of
Yeah.
gets transmuted into anger because they don't know
Ah,
what to do with it, and the feeling is very frustrating for them because they don't know, no one's ever
yeah.
taught them how to do this, how to deal with their emotions,
Yeah.
and it doesn't come
Yeah.
naturally to them like it can to the feminine. So
Yeah.
they're basically sort of lost in their emotion, and then they get angry, not at basically their lack of control is more or less what gets
Mhm.
them angry, is the lack of control over how I feel and what's around me, and how what's around me is making me feel. It's a
Mhm.
lack of self-awareness really that causes all the anger. But that I would say that that's how we deal with emotion, and we don't. So our lesson there is to learn how to just be self-aware, self-inquiry. Why do I feel this way? We have to just really like try to tune in. And there was a practice you gave me, Tassel, that really helped, um, when try to discern what the emotion is. Do you remember what that was? You said like it was a
Was
question
it
that
was
you
it
asked yourself.
try to name it
Maybe that's what it
like
was.
oh, could this be like sadness? Could this be despair? Could this be frustration?
The issue with men is that it often just, when by the time they notice it, it's like already kind of anger. So they're just
Uh,
irritated, right? And
uh-huh.
so they're not sure what's going on because they're just angry. So so
Yeah.
that, at least that's
Yeah.
my experience of it. And I'm getting better at
I-
it. I'm starting to get more, but we have to notice what emotion it is before we get angry about it. Basically, is the trick, I think.
Right. And I do think this is such a helpful aspect to understand for a partner, because sometimes I think when you've gotten uncomfortable, I think you're angry at me. But I
Uh,
think, as you said, you might go right to like frustration, anger yourself. And then I'm perceiving it that you're angry at me, but really you're just experiencing something uncomfortable. And
I'm also usually, for me, this isn't always the case, but because I'm very aware of duality and and these things. I don't tend to project my anger at the other. I tend to look at inside and see where I screwed up more closely. There may be parts of me that are a little angry at the other person, or hold a little bit of resentment, depending on what's happened. But primarily, when I notice that I feel that way, I know that I'm just gonna forgive that. I can let that go. That's okay. It just takes me, it might take me a couple minutes or something. But the other side of it is that I just feel sort of like I've messed up, and when I feel I direct it all at myself, because it I guess I began to realize that I have a lot of energy power with my magical practice. I can influence things that I can unintentionally hurt people, basically, or cause them to feel things that, and this might sound odd, but if I'm too angry at someone, they can have a really poor experience. Not from me doing anything either, just they may start to feel psychotic and stuff like that. So or confused, or like, just because basically if I'm projecting all this negativity at them and anger, I'm basically sort of magically sort of attacking them, is what I've noticed about myself. And I think this is something that we notice as we awaken, and we start to, especially if we're magic practicers and we are doing practices to build our light and like to hold more light, and more just keep growing and growing in that power. So there's a real deterrence inside of me to project that at people in any way, because I feel like it's just really, really irresponsible for me. But I do get really angry at myself. That's why almost instantly I get sick as well. So I just instantly get sick, and get headaches or whatever if I'm upset with myself. So, yeah.
Yeah. And what this really brings up for me, because looking back at my relationships with men, I can just see what you're saying, that often when something seemed to be uncomfortable and probably feelings were arising, the man would go into anger, and then sometimes even be somewhat violent. I've never experienced physical violence, like towards, like, on my body, but around me.
Right. Yeah.
Like bashing furniture. And
One time there's a giant bucket of Cheez-Its or cheese balls, and I was so infuriated, but I didn't want to be violent, that I opened it up and I just went, "Wah!" Just like thousands of cheese balls all over the kitchen. And my ex was just like, "What is happening?" Like,
yeah. So,
but that type of explosive, just freak out, right?
The energy. So yeah, what I'm aware of is not that we ever want to condone or accept or encourage violence in any way.
I'm not saying we should do that.
But just being able to hold compassion for the masculine who is having trouble with the experience of their feelings, and is going into what seems to be more acceptable for society, to be angry. And it might go violent. Hopefully it doesn't. And we're not condoning violence at all. But just be aware of the programming.
It's not their fault so much. It's
they didn't create the system. They didn't create the programming. They have been programmed. So just having compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And boundaries, and whatever you need to do, not condoning violence in any way, but just having compassion for the masculine who sometimes only knows how to go into anger when they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, if you have to be violent, punch a pillow or something, do something like that. That's, you're not breaking stuff. No, it's not destructive really, and you're letting the energy out. You want to let the energy out somehow. Yeah. You want to let it flow through you, art or something. You want to do something, but because you don't want anger sitting in you. Anger will develop cancer. So you want to let it out somehow. So that's the other reason that they do that too, is because they're not meant to maybe have cancer. So they'll be directed to let it out. Like they'll let it out somehow.
Yeah.
So that's why they do that outburst as well. And they don't hurt anyone, but they break something or freak out. Because the anger, they don't know how to manage it, and it has to come out. So yeah.
We can not condone what someone does, and at the same time have compassion for what the context that created that.
Yeah, we can forgive it and accept that that's
Yes.
I forgive you for doing this unloving type of behavior,
Yes.
Maybe we can correct it. Maybe we can make it better. And primarily, like, think about the man's experience as well. Like, yeah, I know it's freaky to see, but he hasn't done anything to you, right? He's not doing any, and I'm not trying to minimize the experience. It's freaky. I've been there, and I've been the one doing it. I've had it done around me. I've had it done at me with bats and stuff. So it's a freaky whole thing. But in it's freaky because it's very uncertain. It's like this explosive, right? But
Yes.
he has not done anything really to really do anything or put anyone in harm's way, really. What he's done
Mm-hmm.
is made us feel really uncertain
Mm-hmm.
because he's exploded and just got destructive and violent towards something. Could he do that to me? Right? So
Yeah.
it is very hurtful to be there, but if we can give it some perspective and think, look how upset he is. He's so upset that he's breaking stuff, freaking
Yeah.
out. Like, imagine that. It's hard to imagine, I think, for a
How that
feminine,
feels.
how
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't really do that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
to be like, it's hard to fathom how that would feel, right? It's so
How much pain they are in that moment.
right, yeah. So we can
Yeah.
try to just notice that side of it and have compassion
Yes.
there, and
Yes.
also accept how we feel about it too, like, because
Yeah.
it is terrifying, right?
Yeah. So we're being our God self, compassion for ourselves and compassion for the other person. And of course, setting boundaries and not condoning violence, but just understanding the person's in a lot of pain to get
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Mr. Sean Kelly, how does divine masculine experience heart guidance?
So this one is interesting because I think it's a little different for everyone, but our heart guidance, I think divine masculine often feels it sort of in the gut. And that's where the expression gut feeling comes from. And divine feminine may as well. I'm not entirely certain. But when the gut is making the decision, people will often say, oh, follow your gut, right? But the gut is actually sort of the center of our self identity. And so a lot of what our gut is telling us is protection based, like survival sort of based, and stuff like that. And if it's a really instinctual gut feeling, then we want to follow it for sure. We want to follow our gut, because our gut is there to like provide us safety, basically, in what's going on. Usually, our gut will lead us to a successful financial thing, or it will lead us away from a disaster of some kind, right? But our heart is open to all and loves all and knows the soul's plan and is like in tune. And so the man has to go through, or the masculine has to go through this process of opening the heart. A lot of times, even humans, a lot of humans are just, they don't have their heart open, right? So man or woman. So they have to open that heart first, and that experience is very beautiful, but it's also, it increases their sensitivity. And so trying to access the heart guidance is very, very challenging for men right now because they feel they're not supposed to be sensitive. So they're trying to open the heart, which makes them more sensitive. And the society around them has been telling them for 20 or 30 years that that's not okay. So they're at this like, well, how do I open my heart and still accept myself sort of place? So men, and I think women too, can't they think a lot of times people think they're checking in with their heart. If they really sit still, they can do it for sure. But generally speaking, their heart is kind of a little closed. They're a little, and that's what I would say is sort of an unconscious sort of state. The heart's, or semi-unconscious sort of state. The heart's closed, and so that's sort of the experience of the heart guidance of like trying to open it up, but also feeling really like opposed to yourself as you do it, because I think you've seen in me like some things I've been getting sort of more sensitive, right? More and more sensitive, but then also I'm still aware of like what I know about that it's a story and things, but I think I've warned you a few times, like I'm noticing that, and I've known that this is how it works, but I guess my experience of it directly is becoming more intense. So, um,
I think what you're
Yeah.
saying is, as anyone, and we're talking about men opening up their hearts, you can feel hurt more.
Yeah.
You feel everything more.
Exactly. Yeah.
And between you and me, I think you've been going through a period of more and more heart opening, and I think you have felt some more hurt maybe than in the past, or
Yeah.
and it's almost like you're just opening up your emotional system for like the first time in a way, fully.
Yeah. Since I was
And
probably a kid, I should probably shut it off when
right.
I was probably like 5 or something.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And there's just a period of kind of settling into that and becoming comfortable with feeling different hurts. Like the first time we feel like a big hurt after, maybe since you were a kid, it's like, oh my God, this is awful. I don't know if I want to feel this again.
Yeah.
And then I think it does get a bit easier. You get sort of more accustomed to feeling the intensity,
Yeah.
and you kind of calibrate, and you just learn how to, and then you learn how to manage the
Hmm.
feelings.
Exactly. That's
And it feels like that's what you're doing right now.
yeah, and that's why it's so important to hold compassion and patience for the other side of it.
Yes. The
So
same as we talked about with anger.
so
Yeah.
the masculine can be blinded by rationality,
Hmm.
totally blinded by their rational mind, but the feminine can be totally blinded by emotion. And uh, either overabundance is sort of an imbalance, right?
Hmm.
If we don't sort of use our wisdom and rationality of the divine masculine within us to balance our emotional states, then we find ourselves feeling irritated or uncomfortable. And basically, like the masculine's opening up sensitive, they're sort of opening up their heart more, and as once they open their heart more, the heart sort of has more room to now bring in the child, right, the wounded child, the
Yeah.
aspects of self that were sort of discarded and stuff and are wounded, that he didn't previously have room to heal and hold.
Yeah.
So that's when experience will get drawn to us to remind us of those wounds so that we can look at those, heal those, and then open the heart more, and then do that again. And that's sort of the expansion of the heart and what that does. It's elevating our perception of our own lives and everything we observe by opening the heart and accepting all parts of us. And so that's why the sensitivity increases, and then you start to have experiences where you're like, I thought I was kind of healed in this area, but oh my gosh, no, that was horrible, and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah. So for, uh, if you're with a masculine and they're opening their heart, and they may be quite sensitive for a period of time, as they're just really getting used to feeling again, and it's, on the other side of it, it's easy to feel a bit hurt at times, because they're just, they can feel very hurt, and then that can kind of impact you. And
Yep.
but to, like, yes, just along with the anger, same thing, to just hold compassion for what the divine masculine is experiencing, and almost like they're just feeling some stuff in a way for the first time, and it's intense and painful.
Pretty
And
much, yeah. That's
yeah.
a good way to think about it. It's like, oh, like if they're
Yeah.
if they're going bananas like that, they're going through something major.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. So again, being our God self, holding compassion for what our experience is. Oh, that was kind of hurtful for me, and being able to take care of yourself, and then holding compassion for the other as well.
oh,
Uh,
Will Dean just asked a really good question. What if your masculine wounds come from a feminine role model? And he also said, I want to say this channel has helped me discover so much about myself. Thank you, Will.
oh, thanks,
Um,
Will.
so Yeah, so basically the feminine role model as for the masculine is sort of shows us what a woman should be. Is that's primarily what happens. That's why we tend to mirror our relationships with mothers and fathers and stuff. Like we look at our mother and or father or role model, and we tend to make these subconscious connections about what a woman should be, or how we should show up for a woman as well. So they'll teach us through modeling how they expect us to show up, and especially if they're older than us, mothers or you said role model, which would imply authority of some kind is feeling. There's a, that role model's up here in your perspective, right? It doesn't mean that they necessarily think of themselves that way. It doesn't have to be a negative thing, but whenever it feels like they have rejected you in some way, that's where the shadow will build. So, and it can be very, very small, very small. And trauma doesn't require that much for us to create it. Basically, what happens is like something really, really tiny happens. Like maybe our mom is on the phone and we hurt our finger, let's say, just a little prick on our finger, and we're like, "Oh, mommy!" Right, trying to get help. But she's on the phone with her neighbor, and she looks down. She sees there's nothing really wrong. It's a little finger prick, and it's fine. But we feel like she's not even paying any attention. We are damaged. She doesn't love us. What all these like huge presumptions just come up. Like, why won't she help me? She's right here. She's just on the phone with her neighbor or whatever. And we freak out as a child, 3 years old, whatever. We flip out. We're like, we've been abandoned. It feels horrible because that woman was our rock, right? So this is where this pain comes from. Or she may go further than that and say, shut up. It's fine. Shut up. Grow up. Or whatever, right? Don't you want to be a man? Something like that. Right? So I'm feeling a lot of the divine masculine like rising in me of like almost anger about how this affects children, basically.
Yeah.
But so it's very challenging, but that's where those wounds grow from, in my experience. And my mom didn't do those things, but it could be anything like any of that. And because we feel like, oh, okay, so I'm not allowed to cry, I'm not allowed to get hurt. So if I'm not even allowed to be. I used to think I wasn't allowed to be cold. Like if I was cold, I wouldn't like I wouldn't ask for a jacket or something. I wasn't allowed to be. That was wimpy to be cold and stuff.
Yeah.
Like so, these things build, and
Yeah.
we reject parts of ourselves, and that's what the wound is. Is us sort of saying, oh, it's not okay that I'm hurt and am wanting some help from a caretaker, role model, friend, whatever. That's not okay. I better tuck that part of me away. Once we do that that part of us kind of keeps calling for attention, right? And that's why more experience comes, so that part can be seen and seen again and seen again and seen again, and the volume raises and raises, and so over the lifetime it compounds on itself. And that's the best way that I could express sort of how a masculine would experience a feminine type wounding. It's we want them to accept us as we are, and it's their role to do that. The divine feminine accepts, the divine masculine sort of serves. That's sort of the principle of love and light. Divine feminine is love, divine masculine is light. Light creates form to the love, directs the love, but the love is pure power. And so, but the love has to accept the forming of what is being offered by the light. If the love doesn't accept the light, then there is, some pain. So, this doesn't mean that women have to accept their men, everything they do, and not talk about it, and just, oh, I like you as you are. It's fine that you slash my tires. It's okay, baby. It's fine. Like, I'm not saying that. But yeah, so that's
So, and how does the divine masculine heal, integrate, remember, expand from wounding from a female role model?
Oh, thank you for asking. That's a good question. I should have went there. The the best thing to do is to forgive. That's really, that's always it. You know, forgive them. She was busy on the phone. She's a busy mom. She's got lots going on in that situation. But not all situations are that surface, right? Are that small. Um, but forgiveness is what allows that part of us to let go of the resentment, and the resentment and anger is what kind of empowers the shadow to hold itself as well. So basically, you can think of like the shadow on like your, let's say it's like a chunk of like gunk on your wall, right? That you kind of want it to come off the wall. You want to clean the wall. Um, if you're really resentful of the person, that gunk is like hard to get off the wall. It's stuck to the wall. You like try and try to clean it and clear it, but you can't because you haven't forgiven the person. You're still upset basically about it. So you have to forgive the person, and then the shadow will still be there. You forgive the person, then the shadow's there, and you forgive and accept yourself. You maybe have held resentment for 30 years about something that somebody did to you, and then maybe you'll feel guilty about that too. So it's always forgiveness, but it's making sure to forgive them for what they've done. Like I always think of Jesus, just Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They don't know what they're doing. She was not aware, you know. And even if it's really crazy stuff, and you're like, they are aware, they're not. They're unconscious. They're in, like for example, murder is the ultimate act of separation. Ultimate act of separation. They're so unconscious and separate from everyone that they think that that's fine, right? And it's not actually how they, like, they're basically just very so confused. They don't know what they're doing. If they, and they'll realize what they've done. They will.
And I just always throw in when we talk about forgiveness that in my personal experience and working with clients, the easiest path to forgiveness is to allow yourself to feel all your feelings around whatever happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then you reach a sense of peace, and you don't really have to do anything. It's not even like you have to forgive. It's just the pain has been neutralized. It doesn't have the charge anymore. So I just encourage any man or woman who's been hurt in any way to honor your feelings and feel all of your feelings, and forgiveness will just naturally occur in that process.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Maybe we have time for one last question because we have to
Sure.
split soon.
So
Do you want to take a question from the
yeah,
chat?
I'm trying to pick.
Okay.
I'm trying to pick one.
Okay.
What is the most challenging for the divine masculine about divine feminine? I think that's the most juicy.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. That's the juiciest one, I think. And probably what people are kind of wondering about. Like, why did he run away? Right? Why won't he like let me talk? Why does he freak out when I'm freaking out? Or
Yes.
when I'm sad, why does he get mad? You know, these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, at least from what I've seen, the the challenge with the divine feminine is that the divine feminine, like, we crave their acceptance deeply. That's all we really want is their acceptance. They want to be understood. So generally, they want to be understood and heard, and we want to be accepted as we are. And that's it. That's kind of the dynamic. But
Okay, so I have to pause and just say I'm always saying this. I'm always saying all I want is just to be heard and tried to be understood.
Yeah,
and I always say whatever happens after that, I don't really care that much. So yes, you've hit it on the head. I agree.
But men, or the masculine, doesn't understand that, right? Naturally, it doesn't naturally understand that. Mm-hmm. Naturally, they're like, why are you giving all this information to me? Like, they're depending on their own orientation, they can just kind of be like, Yeah, no, I understand that you like have all these. I'd rather you just tell me what to do, right? Like, you know what I mean? So the men are very action oriented, service oriented,
Yes, want to fix it.
fix it oriented, right? So if you have a
Yeah.
problem, I don't need to hear all the detail. I'm not talking to Tassel here. This is not how I feel about Tassel, and I want to hear Tassel's stuff. I want to understand. So I'm playing a role here, but I don't I'm not interested in all this details, about how like I went somewhere and I went out for with the guys after work and how it made your whole night horrible because you got in a fight with your mom, or like it doesn't. Men aren't in touch with that aspect of self that would have a really bad experience from that necessarily, right? So they don't comprehend, first of all, the emotions you might be going through because they're not really feeling a ton of their own. But they also are just like, just tell me what to do. Like, it doesn't have to be a big whole thing. And so,
Well, and I'm wondering if it's partly because when we maybe are describing an uncomfortable experience we've had with a man, with you, then for the man, it brings up a lot of uncomfortable feelings. They might go right into anger, and they just don't even want to go there. They just want, tell me what to do. I don't want to feel anything.
that too. Yeah, yeah,
Is
avoidant.
that
It's
possible?
avoidant. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally,
Right.
totally. That's
Yeah.
totally what it is because as humans, we're empathetic creatures. So when you get emotional, it invites me to feel emotion. And
Yes.
I can only blockade that so much. So
Yeah.
the more you're going on about how you feel, the more, and not you, I'm talking from the egoic. I don't feel this way, but the more
Yeah.
the divine feminine's going on about how they feel, the
The
more
more is coming up for
the more it's
you.
coming up for the other person, and if they don't know how to manage it, they don't know how to feel the feelings and let them through and stuff and accept. Because now basically what they're doing is when the divine feminine's doing that, the divine masculine has switched roles. The divine feminine is now asserting her beliefs, feelings, asserting her need,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the divine masculine is suddenly on his heels on the receiver role as divine feminine basically, and is meant
To
to accept
accept what she's
accept with love.
what she has experienced.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and because he doesn't know how to do that, like he just
He doesn't know how to do that in himself. He doesn't know how to
right.
accept
He
his
doesn't know how to
own
accept himself. He doesn't know how to
uncomfortable.
accept these emotions from others. He
Mm-hmm.
knows that that's what feminine does sometimes. It does this, and if I just ride it out, it'll probably be okay. But riding it out can be challenging because you feel stuff. So that's when the guy will just like tune you out totally and just stare at you and not really,
Mm-hmm.
because he can't deal with all the feelings. He just doesn't know how to deal with it. So he's tuning you
Yeah.
out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the most challenging things. But then there's also, uh, you know, at least in my experience, and I think in a lot of male experiences, is I've had uh, women sort of freak out and get very violent as well towards
Mm.
themselves because of my behavior or towards me. Like I've been hit and like hit with stuff and punched and like got a black eye from some girl once. I
Oh
wasn't doing,
wow.
and I was talking, right? Like I wasn't being aggressive. Um, and so in those situations, like now those because those things happen, there's this other aspect where now it's actually a little frightening when a woman is getting emotional near me. Like,
Um.
where could this go?
Mhm.
I think I told a story. This might be a little triggering, so hopefully not. But I'm trying to just be truthful and authentic. I had an experience where my girlfriend was upset with me, and then told me that she was upset with me, and she was, I think she said she'll show me or something like that. And then I didn't think too much of it, and then I couldn't find her, and I was like, where the heck did she go? And she had went into the bath and had cut her wrists and was laying in the blood in the bath.
Ugh.
And I was 14 or 15, and so this is the type of experience that had formed my concept of like what is possible, what the potentials are
Mm.
when someone's really upset, man or woman. I
Yeah.
didn't take it as women do this when they're upset. I took it as a human can do some wacky stuff. I hadn't seen
Yeah.
anything like that before, other than in like
Yeah.
movies. But in real life, I hadn't really experienced that level of self-harm or,
Yeah.
any of that stuff. So that created this feeling of like just really uncertain, like, where is this going? What are they going to say? I've also had people say lots of really, really horrible things to me. And
Hmm.
I'm sure everyone's had that. So, but, as that happens, it's like, what are they going to say next? Also, the more aware we become, the more we can see of what they could be meaning. And like, we get a better picture of like judgment against us or judgment against others, and unloving feelings. And, and then there's a part of us too that feels this need to just try to remain positive, and that this person's dragging me down as well, when it's not like that. But there's a part of us, I think, that feels that too. So there's a lots of avoidance, like of wanting to hear it. And it's just because they haven't understood how to go, oh, it's time for me to flip. I'm going to be the receiver. Give me what you got, baby. Right? Like that's basically what the trick is for the masculine to go,
Hold
okay,
space. Yeah. To
hold
hold
space.
space.
Right? And
Hmm.
a lot of people don't even know what that means, hold space. Right? But all
Yeah.
it really means is lovingly accept what is offered, and
Yep.
just try not to judge.
Try
If
not to
your
be
own feelings come
reactive.
up, try to just forgive them. Try not to take things personally. When people are
Yeah.
upset, they say stuff they don't totally mean as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Is this something we should continue, you think? I think we have to stop now for today.
Maybe
Should
we'll
we do
do, yeah,
a
we'll
part
do
two?
divine. Yeah, maybe we'll, yeah, I think we should. Probably there's more to talk about. So, but on Friday, we'll talk about divine feminine, and we'll go back and forth
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. And then maybe see
Yeah.
there's more here. There's a lot here.
There's lots to uncover here, and there's lots of little tricks. And I think these types of discussions are very enlightening, and will said a lot of really nice things about what we've been sharing today. So I appreciate that, Will. Thank you. But
Thank you
but I
so
think it's
much.
very illuminating to realize how these things get formed, and then why our partner acts the way they do. Why do
Yes.
I close off like that? Because I don't know what else to
Yeah.
do, and I'm just terrified, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's I think that there's lots here. So and I think it's really valuable, and everyone is going through some degree of it, which is
Yep.
why we can talk about it like in such a universal way.
Yes. Thank you, Sean, Mr. Sean Kelly, for sharing so honestly and authentically and vulnerably. And
My
yeah,
pleasure.
I've learned a lot about you and the divine masculine in general. And it's just great to get it all out on the table.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's my pleasure. My pleasure to share, as long as it helps at least one person. Seems like it helped Will a bit. So that's all I
Yay.
need.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes. And if you enjoyed the video, if you can give it a like, subscribe to our channel. And then if you're at all interested in the topic of twin flames, we have a free gathering 2 weeks from tomorrow. It'd be lovely to see everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks again, everyone. Have a beautiful
So
day.
much love to everybody.
Take
Bye.
care.